Greetings loves, it is I, Tactical Girlfriend. Welcome back to the channel. I hope everybody's doing well. So today I'm going to be discussing third line gear. Now, what do I mean by third line gear? Well, first of all, let's go in order here. First line gear is whatever is mounted to your belt line. Second line gear is generally whatever is mounted to the front of your torso. This can include a plate carrier as well as a chest rig. And third line gear is whatever is mounted to the back of your torso, usually a backpack. Now, first line and second line gear are usually essentials that you need very quick access to, and that's why it's in front of you. Third line gear is, of course, third in line, and that's not to say that it's not important, it's just that you don't need the quickest access to it. But that being said, this oftentimes is some of the most essential things that you can carry on you, so let's not neglect that. Whether you're a really casual shooter or a tactical LARPer dork, it doesn't really matter. You probably bring a backpack of some sort or a bag to the range to carry a bunch of different essential items. So let's not neglect this topic and let's jump into it. First, let's bring in a little bit of philosophy here. As with all gear, form follows function no matter what you do, and third line gear is absolutely no exception. If you're trying to make a big long hike, you might want to make sure that your pack has enough space to carry the essentials that you need to sustain yourself out in the field, as well as enough redundancy just in case anything goes wrong. Now, if you're just trying to carry the PB&J that your mom packed you for the airsoft game, you're probably not going to need a really big pack. So just pay attention to volume. That's definitely going to be the first thing that determines what is most appropriate for you to be using. With regards to pack volume, you also need to be aware that getting a pack that is too big for whatever you're trying to carry is going to be very detrimental. It's very easy to spiral into the redundancy and preparedness mindedness that you're going to have around whatever you're doing and pack way too much stuff and a lot of stuff that you probably won't actually need. This is inevitably going to cause more physical strain on you, and it's going to become a liability, and that's going to defeat the entire purpose. So make sure that you're very intentional with whatever volume of pack that you are choosing. There's also something to be said about durability versus the weight of the pack. Not talking about the contents of the pack, but the actual pack itself. If you're going on a very long hike, especially if you're going backpacking, a very ultralight pack can really help reduce the burden on your back. People may not think about it very much, but a backpack, even just ounces here, does actually come into play when you're going very long range on hikes. So an ultralight pack can be a really good option. You just want to make sure that you're bringing enough materials to repair your pack in case it gets damaged, because ultralight packs tend to be a little brittle compared to something that's like made out of a very thick amount of Cordura. So keep that in mind. Ultralight is not always necessarily the best, especially if you're rough on your gear. If you're doing anything at the range, for example, I don't think an ultralight pack really belongs there. Especially if you're running around like crazy and doing drills, no, I don't think that's appropriate. On the other end of the spectrum, we have very heavy, very overbuilt, but very durable materials that are used in some backpacks. This can be nice if you're absolutely treating your stuff like dog shit, and that's fine. If you do that, yeah, you probably should get something that's very durable and overbuilt. If you're anything less than completely abusive to your materials, you may not need that, and again, you might be introducing a lot more strain on your body by choosing a pack that weighs way too much. So again, carefully determine what your purposes are, parameters that you work within, and whatever kind of durability that you need, it needs to be tailored to your purposes, because this affects weight, and it does add up over time. Also, it's worth mentioning that some packs come with frames. Generally, for a day pack, you're not going to run into this, and you're not going to need anything with a frame. Now, if you're going on a long hike, you might want to start considering a frame, especially there's some good hybrid frame options that have kind of somewhat flexible but still rigid enough frames that are built into the pack. That can really help with how that you actually distribute the weight on your back, and it really can take the burden off. Again, for a day pack, probably not necessary, but it is something to be aware of. It's also really important to mention here that padding and straps are very underappreciated and very misunderstood. Now, more padding is not always better. If you're wearing a plate carrier, padding is usually not very useful because the pack itself is sitting on top of your plate carrier, and you've already got shoulder straps on your plate carrier, and you're wearing a pack over it. That's not always going to be very useful, and in fact, those pads can really get in the way. They can rub into your neck, and that just isn't going to be a good day. So make sure that you're being very intentional with your choices there. Also, on the other flip side of things, we should make sure that we do have enough padding if you are just going shoulders exposed. And make sure that your straps are actually properly sized and adjusted for you and optimal weight distribution of your pack. One point I really need to drive home here is that if you are not hydrating, then you're dehydrating. So drink your water, dum-dum. Make sure that you carefully measure how long your activities are going to last and that you have enough water on you to keep you sustained throughout that time. Also carefully consider the activity level physically that you are going to be exhibiting, because that's very greatly going to determine, of course, how much water you drink, along with weather factors and temperature. Whatever you get, make sure that it has enough storage capacity to get the amount of water in you that you need, and maybe just a little bit more just in case. It really sucks if you go out to the range for a day and you gotta cut it short just because you forgot to bring enough water. Also really sucks if you're out hiking in the Sonoran Desert and you're stranded and you got no more water on you and then you die. Hydrate or die. Now with regards to hydration, if you want to upgrade from just carrying a bunch of water bottles, a hydration bladder is a really good idea. Camelback, MSR, and Platypus all really make very good water bladders in various shapes and sizes. Again, make sure that you're getting the appropriate volume for your activity level and time that you're going to be out in the field. The reason a water bladder is really nice beyond just having a water bottle is that it's reusable and that you can actually access the water very readily just by grabbing the hose on your shoulder rather than reaching into your pack and fumbling around and trying to grab stuff. Also, there is a product called ice plates, so if you are wearing a plate carrier, you might want to consider this because it can be integrated either within the plate carrier sleeves or on the outside of it, and it's shaped just like a plate for a plate carrier, of course. The advantage of this is that it can be integrated with the plate carrier very seamlessly, and also it can be frozen. So if you're out in the heat or if you're just generally apt to overheating while wearing a plate carrier, this can really help keep you cool while also keeping your water cool. One other aspect that's oftentimes either completely ignored or overly geeked out upon is going to be compartmentalization and organization. With regards to packs, there's a huge plethora of options here. Some packs are just one big old bag that you dump everything that you own into, and that's totally fine if that's your jam. Other packs have a ton of tiny little compartments with little closures and zippers, and if you really need to separate items from each other, then that's great. But sometimes you don't need that and it's going to cause a lot of unnecessary weight. So very carefully assess what you need, what your parameters are, how much separation of how many items that you need, and the size of those compartments that you need. Next, I want to discuss different kinds of packs that you can use. And the first one I want to start discussing are integrated packs to plate carriers. If you have a plate carrier, there's likely some sort of pack that can actually be integrated onto the back of your plate carrier. Things like the Halo Strategic Flat Pack or the Crye Precision Zip-On Back Panel can be a really good solution here, depending on your needs. The good thing about these is that they are very slick, they're very tidy, neat, minimalist, and they're held snug against your body. The bad part is that, for one, they're really hard to access. You generally need a friend to get behind you and open your pack and access some items, especially if it's lower down in whatever you're working with. And that's not really always going to be very convenient or practical. You also need to make sure that you're really good friends with this person because you're probably just going to be really annoying. Also, they generally don't have a lot of storage capacity and you can't ditch them easily like you would a backpack. So just understand that those are the limitations, but these can be really good options depending on how you're operating. Now there is a really interesting product that I've come across recently, and that's the First Sphere Vertical Envelopment Pack. This thing also integrates to your plate carrier, but by unbuckling a couple buckles, you can actually take the pack from your back, flip it over your head, and let it dangle in front of you so that you can access the contents. This is a really neat solution, I think. It's also a little bit unwieldy looking because it does hang low, and flipping it over your head is just a little bit awkward, but I think that if you are really married to the idea of an integrated pack, this might be a really good solution, and I'd love to hear more about it if anyone has any anecdotes about this particular product. Moving right along, let's talk about hydration packs. There's a lot of really good hydration packs out there. Camelback, again, makes some really good ones. Eagle Industries, Condor even. This is actually the Condor hydration pack that I've used for many years, and it's done extremely well, actually. A lot of people like to dunk on Condor because it's generally a pretty budget-oriented kind of product, but it's actually held up very well throughout the years, and I'm surprised it's not in like at least 3 pieces. So I honestly, in full confidence, can recommend their stuff. Now, with regards to it being a hydration pack, it of course is centered around hydration. So in the back here, I have my 3-liter Camelback in there with the hose, and that's usually provided me with more than enough hydration for a day. Also, you have some good storage solutions, even though they are kind of limited. You got your main compartment here, where you just dump whatever. You also have an expansion zipper so that you can carry even more. You also have the front section here with a smaller compartment with little tiny nets for organization, and that's really nice to have. And in front of that, you also have MOLLE webbing. Now, I generally use this to mount my Condor Ripaway IFAK to it, and that was a really, really good solution for a comprehensive IFAK to be mounted and integrated into my gear. With a handle down here, I could easily rip it away with either hand, and I just generally wore this pack on me all the time whenever I was doing anything at the range. So, really great solution. Hydration packs are really good if you don't need a lot of storage room, but you need to just keep yourself hydrated and carry a few accessories with you. Moving right along, let's talk about a True Blue day pack, one that I've been using a little bit now, and that's the Tasmanian Tiger Essential 15-liter pack. This thing has been great. It's everything that I need out of a pack. It's not too big, it's not too small. Carries everything that I need for a good day trip to the range. Now, this thing is of course 15 liters, has a 3-liter Camelback water bladder in the back here, of course, with a hose. It's got sufficient padding. The back is actually extremely comfortable and has a good amount of airflow. The straps also have a decent amount of padding without being too much for day use. And the only complaint I have there with that regard is that it doesn't come with a waist strap, so I actually created my own and sewed it in. Not a really difficult mod to do, but I just am really insistent on waist straps for properly distributing weights. And if this was a longer range pack, a bigger pack of some sort, I'd probably want something a little bit beefier, of course, with more padding on the waist strap. But this really truly does the trick, so it's been going great. Next, let me break down how I have my pack currently set up. On the outside, I have a few essential items that I like to have quick access to. The first one being a paracord survival bracelet. Comes with a bunch of different survival items on it for fieldcraft and whatnot. Not usually really important. I've never needed it, thankfully. Hopefully never will. But it does have a Sunto compass on it, and that's really handy. I do go hiking with this pack a lot, so having a compass that is just there, ready for you to grab if you need it to get reoriented, is a really, really good idea. Now, it is a bracelet. I used to wear it, but I found that it's just more comfortable and easier just to have it mounted to my pack. Second thing here is a roll of electrical tape. Things need to get repaired in the field, things break down, so having a roll of tape on you is really handy, and so much so that I've actually needed to have it on the outside so I can get very quick access to it, because stuff happens. And electrical tape is a really, really good form factor. You can get duct tape. I personally just think that's a bit big and bulky in most of the ways that it comes, so electrical tape works just fine. Next, I have an Ontario Escape 5 survival knife. Now, I'm not Bear Grylls here, I'm not here to restart civilization, but it's honestly a really, really handy tool. I've used it a lot. I use it to take things down, to repair things. If you're in a more remote location, having a survival knife really can come in handy as a general tool and utility. Also, a small side note, much in the same fashion of my previous Condor setup, I do have this Tasmanian Tiger IFAK that I used to mount to the back of this backpack. Now, I've since moved to a belt-mounted system on my first line gear. It's just generally, I think, a better way to go, but this was a viable solution for a way to actually quickly access my IFAK as long as I was wearing my backpack. Moving right along, I have in this lower zipper compartment a boo-boo kit. And it's all contained within this little Ziploc baggie. Really handy, neat little kit. It's just bandages, gauze, various painkillers, anything that can relieve minor injuries and discomfort in the field, as well as, of course, gloves. Don't infect wounds, make sure that you're keeping things contained and sterile. Don't be gross. Next up, we have the main compartment, and that's basically the only other compartment in this entire backpack. Now, in here, I've actually added an organizational panel, also from Tasmanian Tiger. This thing is mounted here through this little Velcro strip. Taking this out of the pack here, we have our panel, and it's kind of this semi-stiff board that keeps the shape pretty well. And it's got a bunch of different little sections where you can store whatever you need to in a bunch of different fashions and configurations. The way I've chosen to set this up is that I have a couple of pairs of latex gloves here, just in case I need to continue to administer some sort of first aid. It's good to have more pairs of gloves. Also, I have a Sharpie, as well as a Write in the Rain pen and Write in the Rain notepad. Really good to be able to write in the rain, as the name implies, especially because it rains a lot here. So good to have that. And beyond that, I have lead off wipes. When I'm at the range, I need to be led, especially if I'm eating. So it's really, really good to have neat little packets like this. In this pocket, I also have a little set of earplugs in this box. Doubling up on hearing protection, especially when you're shooting big boom booms, can be really, really a good idea, and you should probably do it. So make sure you got additional ear protection so that you can double up properly. Moving right along, in this section, I have an emergency blanket. If you are not immediately in a very heavily populated center, an emergency blanket can be really useful. Even if you are, it doesn't matter if you're doing anything remotely dangerous, having something that can assist somebody who might be going hypothermic or going into shock, this can absolutely save a life, and I strongly recommend carrying them in most instances. Moving right along, I have this last section here, and there's a few very essential items in there. First of all, hand sanitizer, pretty self-explanatory. Keep yourself clean. Again, don't be gross. Second, I have Noon tablets, because if you're dehydrated, you might need to also replace electrolytes, and these are really, really good at efficiently doing that. So not a bad idea to carry those out into the woods. Also, speaking of the woods, I have some bug spray. I don't like getting eaten up alive by bugs, at least, so carry some of that with you. Lastly, I have a lighter. You need to start a fire, pretty self-explanatory. I also like to adopt this old trick of wrapping lighters in duct tape, because it's a more efficient way of carrying duct tape on you rather than just having a weird awkward donut in your pack. Flipping around to the back here, I have dangling from this carabiner a headlamp. Headlamps are extremely useful tools, especially if it's getting dark and you need to navigate for whatever reason. You don't want to have to use your weapon light to point at things that you don't really know or understand where things are. That's just generally not a good idea, so have some sort of external illumination, preferably one that lets you be hands-free. Also in this panel, there are laser cut sections for using MOLLE to mount things to, as well as Velcro. You also have a mesh panel here with a zipper enclosure. I don't use it, but it's there. Moving to this very back pocket here, you can put your hydration bladder in here, you can put a laptop, you can put all sorts of stuff in there, but I've got my Camelback 3-liter bladder here, of course. And I also opt to keep a larger compression bandage, which is something that will definitely not fit in my IFAK, just in case. Now, one consideration that I don't have here, but you may want to have on your pack, is a rain cover. I do get rained on plenty when I'm at the range, but fortunately this pack actually has a really, really good water-resistant lining to it. The interior is mostly lined with this, especially on the top and sides, so it does really keep moisture out pretty well, but if your pack is not designed with that, you definitely might want to consider getting a rain cover. Now, depending on the conditions, I oftentimes will pack a lot of other things. I usually pack a lunch, of course, because I'm at the range during the day. It's good to have that, of course. I also like to pack a spare set of socks. Regardless of hiking or at the range, it's really, really good to have a pair of socks, especially wool. You want to make sure that you don't go hypothermic with a very soggy, cold pair of socks, so be able to replace those. I also often like to pack a Gore-Tex layer. Whether I'm going to the range or going hiking, it doesn't matter. Yet again, you want to make sure that you are staying dry and that you don't go hypothermic. You can also use a poncho, but regardless, just make sure that you're appropriately prepared for whatever weather might come your way. Well, that wraps up my breakdown of my third line gear, past and present. This is simply me just telling you what I've done and what my experience is. I'm not here to tell you what you should do. You need to figure that out. You need to figure out whatever your loadout is, what your setup is, what gear is right for you, and not for somebody else. There's so many good options out there. There's so many good manufacturers like Osprey, Kelty, Arc'teryx, Hill People Gear, Herbal Stock. you name it. I mean, the sky is the limit here. Just make sure that you're carefully weighing all these options and get whatever is best for you. Also, it's your gear, so make sure that you are training in it. No one else can do that for you. No amount of research can actually make up for a lack of training, and no amount of gear acquisition can do the same. So make sure that you are thoroughly familiar with your stuff inside and out. I really want to thank everybody for tuning in. If you found this content enlightening, enjoyable, delightful, or you just really like the upper half of my face, be sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell too. Also, if you've got your own packs that you'd like to recommend to other folks or discuss, please do so in the comments below. I'd love to hear about it. I also really want to thank all my Patreon supporters. You make this channel possible, and I couldn't do it without you. Everything that you see here comes from viewers like you. I don't run ads on this channel. I don't monetize it in any other way. So all the support that you can possibly give me is really greatly appreciated. If you want to go help out, you can always go to patreon.com/tacticalgf. You can see the end of the video for the names of my biggest contributors. And that's all the pack lore I got for you today. I really appreciate you all tuning in. Please be good to each other out there. And as always, please take care. Bye!